There's a difference between being okay with being single and realizing that being single might be who you actually are. Not temporarily, not while you're healing or growing or figuring things out, but permanently, essentially, and authentically. I'm Lauren Jean. This is Intentionally Single. Welcome back. And today we're talking about core identity, what's called being single at heart. This is where I am now. And if you're starting to wonder whether your singlehood isn't just a phase, but your actual truth, this episode is for you. So let's go back. It was November, that rainy Tuesday morning walk I told you about in the first episode of season 2. I was finishing up my master's capstone, training my body, financially secure, watching my daughter become all independent, all of that stuff. And my mind was doing that thing it always does, racing through all the connected thoughts. But on this walk, I gave my mind a specific job. Like I shared, track thoughts, notice sensations, label things, make associations, just observe. And somewhere around the 20-minute mark, staring up at those trees, feeling that small self phenomenon I had been researching, question appeared. What if I'm not broken for being single? Not as a defensive statement, not as a positive affirmation that I was trying to convince myself of, just a genuine question. What if I'm not healing towards partnership? What if I'm just complete? And at the moment I asked that question, really asked it, not from shame or defense, but from just curiosity, everything shifted. Because for many years, I had been operating with one really fundamental assumption, that being single meant something was wrong with me, that I needed to fix myself, that once I healed and felt better, worked on myself enough, became enough, then I'd be ready for partnership. Then I'd want it. Then someone would want me. But what if that entire idea was wrong? What if there was nothing to fix at all? What if I wasn't actually broken? Let me tell you about something my ex-husband said to me years ago when our marriage was ending. He looked at me and said straight in the face, "You know, you're a great mother, but a horrible wife." I held on to those words for a long time, carried them as if they were evidence. Proof that something was fundamentally wrong with me. I'm a horrible wife. I can't do relationships right. I'm broken. This is going to be me forever. Who will ever want me again? And I think looking back at that now, that belief became part of my protective mechanism. For 15, 16 years, if I'm a horrible wife, then I shouldn't try to be one again. If I can't do marriage right, then I should just stay single. It was this protection, a reason not to put myself out there again. But here's what I'm realizing all that time later. Maybe there was some truth in what he said. Not in the condescending way that he meant it, of course. Not in the way that made me feel deficient and broken, but in a different way. Maybe I actually didn't want to be a wife. Maybe I was never meant for that role. Not because I'm incapable of it, not because I'm damaged or selfish or immature, but because that identity, wife, doesn't fit who I authentically am. I got married because I thought I was supposed to. I actually thought I wanted to. Because that's what you do, right? This is what we do in this world. You meet someone, you fall in love, you get married, you build a life together. That's the script. That's what everyone expects. That's what I expected of myself. But what if I was always trying to fit into a role that wasn't actually meant for me? What if the horrible wife wasn't about my failures, but about my incompatibility with that identity? And when I look back now, I can see the constant feeling of obligation, the pressure all the time, the sense that I was performing a role rather than actually living my life, the exhaustion of trying to want what I thought I should want, this guilt about not feeling what I thought I should feel. I wasn't a horrible wife because I was broken. I was a horrible wife because I was never meant to be a wife in the first place. And spending 15, 16 years believing that I was defective, when the real truth was that I was just in the wrong life structure, we'll call it that. That realization really changed everything for me. So let me tell you how I finally got to that realization. I had spent I think it was close to 3 years completing a master's degree in mind body medicine, not because I needed it for my career. I work in real-time management and I absolutely love my job. I really do. But because I was already using meditation and clinical hypnosis in my own life, and I wanted to understand the research behind why they worked and how I could better serve myself and clients that wanted to work with me. And through that program, I developed this, we'll call it a framework, which I'm now writing a book about. And let me tell you, I'm in no rush to finish that. I'm going to take my sweet time. So this book is where I give my mind specific tasks to categorize everything into 5 categories, which is thoughts, senses, labels, observations, associations. And when I did this practice consistently, something became clear. Most of my suffering wasn't coming from my actual life, but it was coming from the story I was telling about my life. The story that living with my parents still meant I failed. The story that working in retail meant I wasn't living up to a certain potential. The story that being single meant something was wrong with me. The story that meant being a horrible wife meant that I was broken forever. But those weren't my stories. These were these cultural expectations that I had taken and made into a personality, my identity. And once I could see that, I could distinguish between what's actually mine and what I've absorbed from everything around me. And you know what? Everything changed. And then it was, I can't remember when, where my ex-boyfriend got engaged and we had a conversation about it. And we've been together. It ended, and I spent many years doing deep emotional work processing that relationship. Learning to love without needing to possess, that is huge. Working through attachment patterns, understanding what that connection has taught me, which is so much. And like I said, when I found out he was engaged, I expect devastation and jealousy. That familiar spiral of what does she have that I don't? But that is not what happened. Like I said, I felt relief and freedom. I felt really happy. Not like I was performing or like I was being mature, but really authentically happy. I was glad that he found someone. He's a good person and he deserves happiness. And I was relieved that our relationship ended when it did, because it gave me this sense of control in my own mind, knowing that I could get through anything. But also knowing that this was actually happening gave me that power to move on, like something had been cut. And that's when I knew for certain I'm not temporarily single. I'm not healing towards looking for a partner. I'm not waiting for the right person. I am truly single at heart. This is who I am. So let me share what some research says about core identity, because it's really interesting. And I've shared her work in past podcasts, Dr. Kislev, 2023 paper, Singlehood as an Identity. And it says singlehood as a core identity describes individuals whose personality and nature mean that they feel better when they are not in relationships and believe that this is their authentic selves. For singles, being single is deeply ingrained in their essence as individuals. This is different from the counter-normative identity, when you're fighting internalized stigma that I mentioned 2 episodes ago. This is different from peripheral identity, where singlehood is fluid and changeable, and this is from the last episode. This is singlehood as your authentic, essential self. And here's what's crucial to understand. This does not mean, I should say, quote, this does not mean that it is ingrained in their genetics or biological development. The argument is more modest in that some single people view their singleness as determinantal, end quote. You can fall in love, you can have sexual desire, but what defines you is feeling a nuptial or a coupled partnership is not your natural state. Dr. Bella DiPaolo has done this extensive research on what she calls single at heart. And in her work, she describes these individuals as people who live their best, most authentic lives as single people. They're not looking for a romantic relationship to make their lives complete. They may have had relationships in the past that they valued, but ultimately they prefer being single. And they experience singlehood as empowering rather than limiting. And a key finding from her research is when asked to imagine their lives, their ideal lives, Single at Heart describes futures that deep friendships and chosen family. They include meaningful work, creative pursuits. They include solitude and autonomy. And they include community connection. But they don't include a romantic partner at the center of their world. They don't include building a life around someone else's needs and preferences. And they don't include compromises inherent in partnership. That was a revelation for me. When I imagined my ideal future, the life would make me most happy if a romantic partner just simply wasn't in it. Not because I'm afraid, not because I'm avoiding being vulnerable. I'm very good at that. But because that's genuinely not what I want. And here's what people get confused about. They think being single at heart means that you couldn't find someone good enough. That's not true. I have found a few that were good enough for me. It doesn't mean that you're too picky, that you're settling for being alone because you can't get what you really want. But this research shows something completely different. And there was a study on voluntary singlehood found that people who are single at heart have had opportunities for relationships they chose not to pursue. They often have had past relationships that were objectively good but still felt wrong. They describe feeling relief, not regret, when relationships end. And they experience freedom rather than loneliness in singlehood. This was my experience with my ex. It was hard at first, but that relationship was good. He was a good person. We had deep connection. The relationship taught me so much. We also had a lot of bad, but I knew deep down inside that he was a good person. And not because of anything that he did or didn't do. We each had our own issues, and it infected the relationship, unfortunately. But because the structure of the partnership, even a good partnership, doesn't fix who I am. So there is some additional research on Gen X and chosen singlehood according to the 538 analysis of singles data 2023. And I'm going to bring back these stats that I shared in the last 2 episodes that are relevant to this particular episode. Among Gen X singles, which again are ages 45 to 60, 64% enjoy being single more than being in a relationship. 65% have more important priorities than partnership. And 29% of those over 40 are not seeking committed relationships or dates at all. But what's more interesting is the Pew Research Center found that among singles over 40, nearly 60% express disinterest in any form of dating. And this isn't temporary or situational. It's a conscious choice based on life experiences. And the data suggests that significant portion of Gen X singles aren't just, quote, okay being with single for now, unquote. They're genuinely uninterested in partnership. They're single at heart. And they're finally old enough and confident enough to claim that identity. And here's what happens when you realize you're single at heart. You start looking back at your life with completely different eyes. All of those relationships that supposedly failed, maybe they didn't. Maybe you were just trying to fit into a structure that was never meant for you. I did it many times. Research also shows that when people identify as single at heart, they often reinterpret their relationship history. Like past breakups that felt like failures now feel like escapes. Periods of being unable to commit now feel like honoring authentic preferences. And times they felt, quote, selfish for wanting time alone now feel like just healthy boundaries. It all depends on where you are in your life and where you really feel like your true self. For me, this meant reinterpreting that comment from my ex-husband. You're a great mother, but a horrible wife. For years, I heard that as you're broken and you're deficient and no one will ever want you again. I made up my own explanation to what he said to me. Now I just hear as the wife role doesn't fit who you are. And that's not a failure. It's just the truth. People have often asked, how do you know if you're single at heart versus just avoiding intimacy? And there's research on that as well. And it shows that avoidant patterns look like fear of vulnerability, consistent pattern of constantly sabotaging relationships. There's a desire for connection, but an inability to actually sustain it. And there is a desire for connection, but, I just repeated that one, an inability to sustain it. There's feeling lonely, but unable to let people in. So like you're putting that wall up. Relationships ending because of fear, not preference. And your core identity looks like genuine contentment in solitude. Deep friendships and chosen family, no pattern of loneliness, relief when relationships end, not regret, and relationships ending because of misfit, not fear. For me, the difference came clear when I looked at my social life. I have deep, meaningful connections, but I do keep my social circle very small. I don't isolate myself, and I'm not lonely. I don't avoid intimacy. I have lots of intimate conversations with friends. I have close friendships. I have a close relationship with my daughter. I have a soulmate connection with my ex-boyfriend, which what I avoid is romantic partnership as something that I need to have, but it's not fear. So here's what happened when I finally said out loud to myself and to my heart, I am single at heart. The shame dissolved completely. Not this performative, I'm over it, that I've been doing in the peripheral identity, but actual complete dissolution. Because there's no shame in being who you authentically are. For years, since my daughter was little, I believed I'm single because I'm broken. I am single because I'm a horrible wife. I'm single because something is wrong with me. But now I understand I'm single because that's who I am. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not open to meeting someone anymore, not because I've closed myself off, but because I'm not seeking partnership in any form. If someone showed up tomorrow, I should say, who was like perfect on paper, I just wouldn't want it. I just don't have that space in my life. Not because I'm afraid, but because partnership, even a perfect partnership, isn't my path. And let's face it, there is no such thing as a perfect partner. Anyone could look perfect in the beginning, but then all their shit comes out and there you are left with it. And you know what's really exhausting? Keeping yourself open to something you don't actually want. maintaining this performance of I'm not closed off and pretending that I'm happy now, but still receptive to change. When I stopped allowing that openness, when I finally said, I don't actually want this, I don't want a partnership, the relief was immediate. It's like I gave myself permission because I've been carrying this weight of possibility, this weight of maybe someday, this weight of keeping myself available for something that I actually didn't desire in the end. And then when I put that weight down, I could finally fully inhabit my life as it is. And let's come back to this. Living with my parents became this choice. Something shifted. I lived with my parents and my daughter for 15 years, and I saw that evidence as failure. I was wondering, what the heck is wrong with me? Why do I still want this? But when I claimed that core identity, the story changed. I live with them because I genuinely like living with them. I actually like my family. We have our own spaces. We have autonomy. We share expenses. We support each other. My daughter has grandparents actively involved in her life, and they know everything about her. She is super close to them. I'm not living here because I can't afford to live alone. I'm financially secure. There were years back when I wasn't, and I actually did move out, but I wasn't financially secure. I ended up coming back because I needed to be here. But now I just honestly, I love it here. I love my room. I love the space that we have. And I'm not living here because I'm waiting to move in with someone. I am living here because this is a living situation that I prefer. And suddenly, it's not embarrassing anymore. It's a choice, my choice, based on what actually works for me, not what I think I should be doing. So yeah, I mentioned I'm writing a book. Let's call it Quieting Your Mind for now. That's not the actual title. It is this task-based mindfulness framework that I developed during my program. The one that finally quieted my racing mind enough to distinguish between these cultural messages and my own truth. And I'm writing it as a single at heart person, not as someone looking for partnership, not as someone who's figured out to be okay while waiting for the right person, but as someone who discovered her authentic identity and wants to help others do the same, no matter what that is. If you want a partner, if you don't want a partner, if you're not sure. That shift from writing as broken to writing as a whole person who actually knows what she wants changes everything about the work. I want you to do an exercise with me. Close your eyes if you're in a safe space to do so. If not, just listen to my words. You can use this as a coaching moment, or you can use this as a meditation, however you feel like you need to. So if you want to close your eyes and you're in a safe space, please do so. So I want you to imagine your ideal life 5 years from now, 2 years from now, whatever feels more reachable. Not what you think you should want. Not what would make your family happy. Not what would prove you're successful or normal to anyone. Forget everyone. This is just you. What would make you most happy? In this ideal future, where do you live? What does your daily routine look like? And just allow the thoughts to pop up. You don't have to think about this. Just allow the answers to appear. What does your daily routine look like? Who do you spend your time with? What brings you joy? What fills your day with meaning? And now the crucial question. In this ideal future that you just imagined, and maybe a bunch of ideas popped up, is there a romantic partner at the center? Not, would you be open to one if they showed up? But in your actual ideal vision, is partnership there? And if so, in what way? If the answer is yes, genuinely yes, then you might have the peripheral identity, fluid, open, content, but seeking. That's legitimate. But if the answer is no, if your ideal future doesn't include a romantic partner at all, then you might be single at heart. And if that's true, if you're realizing right now that partnership isn't actually what you want, how does that feel? Is it scary, relieving, another emotion? All the emotions? Just notice. I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. Just notice what feels true to you in this moment. Thank you so much for going through this mindfulness practice with me. Please email me at intentionallysinglepodcast@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram at thegirlwiththevine.tattoo. Tell me, did you imagine a partner in your future? Did you realize partnership isn't actually what you want? I want to hear your truth. Not what you think you should want, but your actual truth. Next week, we are, well, you know what? Maybe I'll save this one for myself. I was going to share a teaser with the next episode, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to share. So I'm going to keep this between just me and you. Nice and quiet. Please take some time. Review this episode if you need to. Come back to it and just figure out which identity do you believe you land under. I would love to hear from you again. This is Intentionally Single. I'm Lauren Jean. Singlehood as an authentic identity, not a problem to solve. Thank you so much for your time today. Bye.